Okay, so let me take a look. That's a weird schedule. Okay, so your test is November 5th. Okay, you guys know that, right? Okay, right. So obviously, so I'm going to give you, you guys are going to have just a mini homework assignment tonight. Okay, same thing with block B. Then what's going to happen is you guys are going to, we'll review a little bit tomorrow. Okay, then obviously, rather than a night session on the 4th, like I usually do, we will spend class just doing a sample problem, and then the 5th is your exam. Okay, again, I wanted the 4th to be your exam, but unfortunately I can't. So, all right, that being said, let's get started. All right, here we go. Share my screen real quick. All right, let's say, for example, okay, well, this is the last thing that we're going to be learning, okay? This thing is, right now, it's what we call an array list, okay? Now, or I'm sorry, not an array list, it's a for each loop. Now, so far, we've learned two different types of loops that you guys are going to be required to know. You guys need to know the for loop, and you guys need to know the while loop, okay? Now, what this loop is called, this loop that we are learning is what we call a for each loop, okay? It can also be called a enhanced for loop or a read-only loop, okay? Whenever you hear any of these three terms, they're talking about this specific loop in general, okay? All right. Good. All right, so this is called, again, a for each loop, an enhanced for loop, or a read-only loop. So what I'm going to do is right here, I just have a quiz. I have the quiz, if you guys remember the quiz that we took. Oh yeah, you will have a quiz tomorrow, by the way. Sorry about that. So there's nothing said about Tuesday, just Wednesday. So you guys will have a quiz on Tuesday, all right? So this is just a standard quiz. As you can see, it has a toString method and it has a setName method, okay? Now, I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to make an array, okay? So of quiz objects. So I say quiz array x equals new quiz. So again, what I have done is I've made an array of quiz objects. Are any of them initialized? No. Always remember that, okay? So again, it's like a two-step initialization process. You've declared the name of the array. Step one of the initialization is the size. Step two would be finishing with the constructors. Does that make sense? We good there? Okay. So now what we're going to do is we have quiz array x equals new quiz 5. All right. So the next thing I'm going to do is this. I'm going to initialize them. And in this case, I'm just going to initialize them to some random thing. Okay. So I'm going to say for int j equals 0, j is less than 5, j plus plus. Okay, I could say 5 or I could say x.leg. Since I want you guys to start using this, I'm going to keep it like that. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to initialize them. X index j is equal to, and I just use the constructor, new quiz, open parentheses, and I'm going to say John. Okay. Now, what I normally could do is this. Okay, I could just say, now I can just print out x index j. Okay, so this would allow me now, because I have a toString method, you can print this out. Name John, name John, name John, name John, name John. Okay, pretty clear, right? Pretty cut and dry. All right, name John, name John, name. All I've done is I've initialized all 5 objects to be the same thing, right? So if I wanted to make it different, I could say, just so we could tell that there's, so that there's like, we can tell they're different ones. So it's John 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There we go. Okay. Just so we can see that they're different objects. Now, most of the time you won't do this. Most of the time what a program will have you do is they'll have you initialize it. Then they will have you cycle through and what they call verify the loop. Okay. This is where the for each loop, or what again we call the enhanced for loop, does. For, what I do is I create a dummy variable. Okay. Now this dummy variable or object needs to be the same type as the array that you are going to be going through. So what type of object do we have in the array? What is that? What's in my array currently? Anyone? Come on, guys, wake up. Isis, what's in my array?
A string or a literal? Wait.
You need to learn this type of terminology. What is currently in my array X?
5 quiz objects.
Vasily.
An int.
A string.
Come on, guys. I know it's early. I know it's Monday. Come on, but we need to know this. Right now in my array are quiz objects. You don't need to say how many. You can say, if you want, you can say 5 quiz objects. But right now, for example, if I had ints, you would say primitive integer variables or integer variables. But in this case, oops, I have quiz objects. Oops. Okay. So I have quiz objects. All right. So what I now do is I say int. So what I do is I choose a dummy object, quiz A. Again, this needs to match this. And then I use a colon. So I say quiz A and the name of the array that I'm going to cycle through, X. Now, I can say A. So the way that this is working is A will take, so right now I have an X index 0, X index 1, X index 2, X index 3, X index 4. What A does is starting from the beginning, it will occupy. It basically will say A in this case, A is the same as X index 0. Okay. Then it will be X index 1. Notice there's no incrementation. Okay. A for each loop always starts at the beginning and cycles through the entire array. Okay. It starts at the beginning and cycles through the entire array. Now, because A represents index 0, normally I could say something like X index 0. Let's say I just wanted to change the name, dot set name. Okay. Okay, right there, what I did is I just set the name to Peter. Okay, so if I run this now, name has been Peter because I called on X index 0. Well, in this array, okay, A represents this portion, not the period, but this portion. So starting with X index 0, so if I said set name and I set it back to John, okay, technically what this is now going to do is it's going to set every name back to John. John. So again, A is basically just taking the place of the object name. Now, a lot of people like using this because it's simple, especially if you have like, let's say that this wasn't X. Let's say this was quiz takers. Okay, and I had to do quiz takers.length. And then quiz takers, okay, index J. So is that quiz taker? Sorry, just setting this. Okay, so I could do all of that. Okay, But instead here, what I can just do is I can say quiz takers, okay? And then A, rather than having to write out this entire thing, A just represents that, okay? Now, a couple of things with the for each loop. A standard for loop, in this loop, what am I doing to my array objects?
Initializing them.
What am I doing to my array objects here? Anyone? What's my for loop doing, guys?
Iterating through each of the.
My for loop is initializing the objects in my array. Okay, it is initializing them. Ooh, you guys are off your game today. You guys, I hope you guys had a great weekend. Okay, it is initializing your arrays. A for each loop cannot initialize. Okay, it cannot initialize. That is why it is also referenced to as a for each, or I'm sorry, a read only loop. Okay, it cannot initialize. Now, once it's initialized, can it use the methods to overwrite values and stuff like that? Yes, that's fine, but it cannot do the primary initialization. All right. The second thing is the power of a for loop is, let's say I wanted to keep every fifth index empty. Okay, I just wanted to initialize every fifth one, or I wanted to just even print out every fifth one. I can say j plus equals 5, or let's say it's every second one, j plus equals 2. Okay, now theoretically, this is only going to run for 0, 2, 4, 3 times. You can't do that with a for each loop. With a for each loop, it needs to go through every single cycle. So up here, this one's going to cycle 3 times. You could even, if you want to, just print out only, I mean, you can put an if statement. You know, you could say if that, you know, an index of A is equal to whatever, you know, skip it. Then you could do that. But at the same time, like that's what you have to, like, it's still going to cycle through 5 times. It's going to hit that if statement. And sure, it'll look like it's only printing out 3 times. Well, in fact, it is actually running 5 times. So the positive is that the enhanced for loop, 1, the syntax is a lot shorter. 2, it's very fast. Okay, it's very quick. All right. 3, it's just used to verify, just making sure that it's a verification loop. Okay. The downside, 1, it has to cycle through everything. So it's always going to run the amount of times that the array is. So for example, the array is 10, it's going to run 10 times. The array is 1,000, it's going to run 1,000 times. Okay. And 2, you cannot use it to initialize. You cannot use it to initialize. So if you try to use a for each loop to initialize, it's going to be wrong. Okay. All right. Does anybody have any questions regarding this enhanced for loop? Again, this is the last thing that we are going to learn. All right. For this section. All right. You will have a homework assignment that will specifically go over enhanced for loops, and I will set that up as well. Okay. All right. So that is basically what I'm covering for class today. I think it's a good thing too, because you guys are like zombies right now. Okay.
Hello, Marty.
So I'm going to put the homework assignment on right now. It's not going to be too tricky. Okay. But it should be, it's not gonna be too tricky, but it'll make you think a little bit. You're definitely gonna have to use methods, okay? So, I can't hear you guys. Is that what you guys are saying?
Hello.
Hold on. Oh, can you, okay, somebody talk right now.
Hello.
Okay, I can hear you. For some reason, Zoom made my microphone the speaker. I don't know why it does that. We have been answering the questions. Have you guys? Oh, okay. I was wondering. Isis usually gives me at least some awkward answers, so I was wondering why she was a little quiet today. All right, so that. All right, so that being said, I'm going to put the assignment.
I had a question.
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. Now that I can hear you guys, what are your questions? Sorry.
So when you use the set name and the enhanced for loop, you're not changing the values, or are you changing the values?
You are changing the values, but you can't do a first time initialization. You actually are changing the values. But you can't call on the constructor, I think is the best thing to say.
All right.
Okay. Anyone?
I have a question.
Yes.
So you can't initialize values in the enhanced loop. So if in the top loop you did like j plus equals 2 for your incrementation,
Yeah.
does that mean because some of them aren't like initialized, how does that affect the?
So remember what I told you. So if you don't initialize them in an array, numerical values are 0, objects go to null. So if I leave everything as is right now, okay, let me share my screen. So basically the uninitialized objects will basically just show up as null. So if I get rid of this, so right now that technically, okay, I'm only initializing 3 of the objects in this quiz, right? So if I run this, take a look. John 1 null, John 2 null. Okay. So they'll just stay as null. Okay. There's a special schedule tomorrow. Oh God, it's let me pause recording. All right, guys. So I'm gonna put the assignment up right now. I'll have your quizzes also graded by today. Because I have a nice little free schedule. None of my middle schoolers did their homework. So yay, goes to figure. So yeah, so I will have your quizzes ready and I'll have your homework on literally within a couple minutes. Okay.